If you're looking for creative ways to save money, this is the video for you. Hi, I'm Hope.
And I'm Larry.
From Under the Median. Hey, this is part 2 of a 3-part series giving you 70 plus creative, frugal ways that we have saved money throughout the past 32 years of marriage. Now, before we get into them, let me tell you a little bit about ourselves, just in case this is your first time to join us here on the channel. We raised our 4 boys debt-free, including paying cash for this home when at that time our income averaged a little under $40,000 a year. So along the way, we learned to slice and dice and cut areas off of nearly every single budget category. We are going to share some of those ways with you today. Now, at the end of this series, we are going to have a very special video where we feature all of your best suggestions. So we are asking that you leave your thoughts and suggestions on how you save money very creatively in the comment section of this video. And then we're going to take all of those best suggestions and have a special video after this series is completed. All right, part 2. If you missed part 1, I'm going to link it up above and in the description of this video so you'll be sure not to miss it. Now, today's video starts with a series of suggestions all about getting married. All right, so these are some things that we would suggest that you think about when it comes to getting married.
Most of these suggestions we actually implemented into our own wedding because we were broke.
Yes, we were very broke.
and nobody was funding our wedding. We were on our own. So the first thing that we did was we had a relative who happened to be a very good amateur photographer take our pictures. Now, he had a very nice 35 millimeter camera. I gave him 3 rolls of film. He took all the pictures, and at the end of the day, he handed me back the 3 rolls of film. And that's how we did our wedding pictures. And we got some beautiful wedding pictures.
It actually worked out really, really well. And yes, it was real rolls of film because we got married 32 years ago.
Yeah.
All right. So the next thing that we did was we borrowed decorations for the wedding reception. When I booked the church hall for our wedding, the church secretary said, you know, are you going to need any decorations for the reception? I'm like, well, yeah. And she said, we have brides all the time who have their weddings at the church, and when they leave for the day, they're like, I don't want these decorations. I will never use them again. I'm just donating them to the church. So she took me like in this little room off of the reception hall, and it was filled, literally, there's like shelf after shelf after shelf, any different color of combination that you might want of decorations for weddings. And so I went there and I found all the dusty pink decorations, because it was the 80s, people, all right? Everybody that married in the 80s had dusty pink. That was it. And so I found all those decorations and decorated the whole hall using the decorations from the church. I made sure they were in great shape and put them back on the shelf when we were done with them.
So you might inquire at your church as to whether there's a stash of wedding decorations that you can borrow.
The other thing you might do is if you've been to a friend's wedding recently that they have had great decorations and you really enjoyed them and you know they still have the decorations, see if they'll let you borrow them for your wedding reception.
Okay. The next one is borrow pew bows and flowers for your wedding. Now, I'm not an expert at any of this, so you'll have to explain that.
Okay, once again, you're going to be able to find some friends who have recently gotten married. They had great pew bows. That's those decorations you put right at the end of the of each of the aisles, and see if you can borrow them. We borrowed all of the flowers for the sanctuary. So all of the flowers that were like up front with us, a friend of mine had beautiful taste in flower arrangements, and she had huge decorations. And I said, can I borrow those? And she graciously let me do that.
Another thing you can do is borrow a wedding dress from a friend, or wear a vintage gown that maybe belonged to your mother or grandmother.
This is, I think, just an endearing thing. Now, you got to be real close to a friend, and you got to be about the same size to ask if you can borrow her wedding gown. So, and particularly if it's like a sister, I think that is also a lovely, lovely tradition. Now, I did not borrow my wedding dress. I got my wedding dress from a place that was going out of business, and I paid $25 for it. And in fact, I did not pay for it. A friend of mine called me and said, I would like to buy your wedding dress for you. So we had great fun shopping for the wedding dress, and we found it marked down to $25. In fact, the hat that I wore, yes, it was the 80s. Everybody wore hats at their weddings in the 80s. The hat cost more than the dress did.
That was amazing. That blew me away because we were really on a very tight budget. Another thing you can do is have a friend bake your wedding cake. Now, we happen to know a personal friend of Hope's that was an expert at baking wedding cakes. She did this on the side. It was a side job. Mm-hmm. And she baked a beautiful cake. I think it was like $35, if I remember. It's what she charged us.
She did not charge us nearly enough for that wedding cake. So that was very gracious of her. But if you have a friend and you know they're really good at cakes, see if they'll bake your wedding cake.
Most of the weddings of my cousins were at the reception. They just had cake and punch, maybe some peanuts and mints. But that was it. It wasn't elaborate. They didn't do a full-blown meal back in those days. This is something that came in later. But that saved a lot on the cost. And that is what we did. We just had a punch and cake. And I don't think we had quite enough cake. I think we ran out. Early.
What was the drink? We were running out of drink.
Oh, is that it?
And
okay.
They were like, hurry, open your gifts because we're running out of
the punch.
Oh. And so, Another idea, if you really don't want to do just cake and punch and mints, is to do a potluck wedding reception. Now, we've seen this done recently twice, and it was a great experience. The bride and groom provided the meat and the main dish, and then everybody else that came to the wedding brought something to share. It was like a wonderful time of fellowship, and it was a great time. Larry's nephew and his wife were married at a state park, and so they provided the main part of the reception, and everybody else brought something to share, and it was a great time.
The next tip has to do with the honeymoon. Yes. Instead of staying at a very expensive hotel, consider going camping. Now, I know that sounds really different. I'm not saying everybody has to do these things.
Anybody else outdoor people out there, tell me if you would consider camping on your honeymoon.
Now, as it turned out, our first night was provided for us by Hope's folks. They provided a stay at a very fancy hotel. There's a long story I won't go into. It didn't quite work out the way it was supposed to, but the thought was nice. Then from there, we went up to a local state park, Starved Rock State Park. It's up about halfway up to Chicago. And we rented a cabin. And at that time, the cabins were pretty cheap. I think the cabin was about $40.
Yeah.
And we spent one night there. But then my mom and dad graciously provided their car and trailer. Now, they were old. They were also from the 70s.
He means the car and trailer, not his parents.
Oh, that was good. Not my mom and dad. But they loaned us their car and trailer to go down to southern Illinois. We went down to Shawnee National Forest. They had a blast. It was so much fun.
You guys, this was Larry's criteria for a honeymoon. He wanted to go someplace where we could be alone, where nobody else would be around. And if anyone is old enough to remember the summer of 1988, it was one of the hottest summers on record. Mm-hmm. And the trailer that we borrowed did not have air conditioning.
Neither did the car.
And neither did the car. So I got to say, he got his wish. We were like, it was us and the octogenarians who were at the campground who were definitely sitting in their RVs with their air conditioning running. So we got to be very alone for 2 weeks.
We were young, and it really was a very fun vacation. So that would definitely, if you're really looking to save a lot of money, that's a way to save money.
All right, we're moving on to some household ideas. One of our household ideas is make sure that you don't ditch those plastic grocery bags when you bring them home from the grocery store. Instead, repurpose them so that you can organize things around your house, so that you can carry lunches back and forth to work, Or, and this is what we do with an awful lot of our plastic bags, because we do not want to be responsible for putting more plastic in landfills, all right? We donate them to our local used clothing store. And they love to get clean, dry, used grocery bags to use. So if you can find some place to donate them, even better.
Another item is you can drink water instead of soda or juice or milk. Now, we drink a lot of water. We also like to drink coffee and tea. Those aren't terribly expensive. But soda, punches, and that kind of thing, that adds up to quite a bit of extra expenditure. So we
And
don't.
they're not good for you.
No, they're not.
They're not good for you to drink. So
No.
drink water, lots of water. Now, let's skip down just a minute here, Larry, to this comment where we talk about water bottles. Some of you have mentioned, like Larry occasionally will come on to do one of the programs with me and he has a water bottle, and people have commented and said, gosh, we're really surprised that you buy bottled water. If he's drinking bottled water, it's because it's a water bottle that we have been out someplace and gotten a water bottle given to us, and we keep it and we refill it. We do that all the time because he is a bike rider, guys. Every night he's out riding his bicycle. And it's really handy, particularly in the middle of summer. He'll take those used water bottles, refill them, stick them in the freezer. And then when he leaves on his bike ride, which sometimes is up to 20, 25 miles, that water will slowly be thawing, especially in the middle of summer, and it'll provide him drinking water while he is on his bike ride. Now, the other thing we do with those frozen water bottles is...
we use them for packing our cooler. We'll actually, use those to keep things cold. And then by the time we get to where we're going, they'll be thawed out enough that then we can drink the water out of them. So they serve a dual purpose in that case.
Yeah, we actually gave a lot of other tips for picnicking. We did a video on it earlier, and we'll link that video up above and then the description of this video so you can watch that when you're done with this one. All right, so the next thing.
We do this, and we want to be careful how we mention this one. But we save condiment packages that we might get from a restaurant. So we have a local place in I guess it's a national chain actually that
Subway
has sub sandwiches. And they might
Sorry.
they might give you extra packets of mustard and mayonnaise or whatever it is they give you. So we just save those, and then we'll reuse them later, maybe on a picnic or something.
Now, what we're not telling you to do is go into a restaurant, purchase one sandwich, and grab 20 or 30 condiment packets and take them out the door with you. But especially if you go through drive-through and say, put plenty of condiments in there, they're going to throw in just a handful, and you're going to wind up with some of them left over, and that's what we save for later use.
The next tip we've mentioned in a previous video.
Yes.
But when we do a day trip, we, instead of stopping at a restaurant to feed the family, we will pre-pack all the food, and that's what we'll do with the cooler. We put it in a cooler and we take that with us. Now, if we should forget to do that, sometimes we've gone to a local grocery store and just paid maybe $15 to get a loaf of bread and some sandwich making material. And then we do a picnic that way. But you can save an awful lot of money by doing that rather than going out to eat.
That's right. Larry and I have always been just a little bit different than average. So one of the things that we did, we used to go to antique sales. They were one-day antique sales. You would pay a price like $5 a head to get in. And they had like 200 vendors there. It was very large, and so it took you all day to go through. So because we liked to be a little bit different, we would take a small folding table with one of our nice linen table coverings from the 1940s, and our 1940s tableware and our dishes, and we would sit at the edge of the parking lot somewhere in a little grassy area and have our picnic. And people walked by and they were either like, "Wow, that's really cool." Remember, it's an antique sale, right? You would think everybody would think it was cool, but people either thought it was cool or they thought that we were a little bit loony.
But
it was fun.
Either way, we were saving money by not buying their restaurant food or whatever they had to offer there. So we're going to move on now to a totally different subject. And this one might depend on maybe the weather, heat, some of that. But we would suggest that you wear clothing multiple days rather than just wearing it one time, then throwing it in the wash. Wear it for a few days if you can. Now, if you get hot and sweaty, you don't want to obviously put that back on. But you can save some money doing laundry by not doing it as often.
Let's talk restaurants for a minute. This is like the opposite of the picnicking idea. Now, do we ever go out to restaurants? Yeah, we don't do it very often, but we do go out to restaurants occasionally. So we're going to give you 3 really quick tips for saving money at restaurants. We actually have 20 different ways that we save money at restaurants and that we recommend that you might want to try. If you want to see us do a video about saving money at restaurants, then tell us in the comments of this video and we're happy to do that. All right, so our first tip for restaurants is that you just might want to be a dinner splitter. Those entrees are awfully large, some of them.
Yeah.
And so Larry and I walk into a restaurant all the time and say, just bring us an extra plate and we're going to split it.
Yeah, when we go out to eat. It's not very often.
All right, next.
So another thing you can do, if you're not real hungry, you're not starving, get an appetizer instead of a full dinner. And that will save you some money. Of course, another thing is take advantage of their what do you call it, when they have a sale before, you get there before
like
5
the
o'clock.
early diner specials.
Right.
Yeah.
Take advantage of those. Another thing to do is take advantage of a night where they might offer free meals for children. And we used to do that. Boy, we would really cash in with 4 kids. I felt sorry for them. So we bought 2 adult meals and the children ate for free. It was a good deal.
Now, here's the caveat. Although our ultimate bill was actually very low when all the kids ate for free and Larry and I were the only ones paying for our meal, we tipped that server as though we had purchased every meal. We generously tipped our server. They work hard and they deserve to be compensated for that. So although we don't go out to eat very often and we have great ways to save on eating out, we always make sure that we are tipping generously. All right, the next thing you can do for restaurants is get your restaurant food to go, and then we're back to the original idea of take it to the park and eat it there, just like you were on a picnic. All right, the next thing you might want to do is consider going on a sample-orama.
Yeah, we have a local chain in town. It's common. It's Sam's Club. Now, they did this before the unnamed pandemic disease came on the scene, but they used to offer every Saturday, they would offer some samples, maybe 8 to 10 samples. So we would go there while we were doing our normal shopping and partake in the samples. We would get home and discover that we really weren't very hungry after all that. So that became a sort of a pseudo way to eat out.
Now, the next thing is actually something Larry is super duper good at, and that is bartering to get what he wants.
Now, I'll just give you one brief example. This was incredible. So I'm on my way to church one morning. The neighbor up the street had thrown out some Altec Lansing Stonehenge 3 speakers, a pair of them. Now, those are really big, expensive speakers. And so I stopped, loaded them up, took them back home, and then I hooked them up and didn't really like the way they sounded. And my sound system was not good enough to power those speakers. So I offered them to a used stereo shop that dealt with used equipment. They were very happy to get those. And they traded me a set of JBL speakers that were very good. They sounded nice. And a Denon amplifier, which is a really good brand of equipment. And so I really made out very good on that deal. So you can do that. You can barter stuff. You just have to kind of find an avenue for it. And sometimes you can just pick up an item, repair it, and maybe sell it on Marketplace and use that money to purchase something that you want. There's all kinds of ways to get around on that.
Next thing you might want to do is collect bottles to return for the deposit money. Does anybody do that? I know in a lot of states there is a 5 or 10 cent deposit that you can get back on an awful lot of bottles. Now, we are old enough to remember when the only way that soda came was in glass bottles. And when we were first married, those were still around, and we would take the bottles back for the deposit. Sometimes we'd find bottles people weren't going to take back to the deposit. They were just thrown out to the curb, and we would pick them up and take them back for the deposit.
Oh yeah. I don't think it's as common today as it used to be. There was dairy stores that they used all deposit type bottles. So those are the good old days. You can shop for groceries just once a month, and you'll be amazed at how much money you'll save. If you're not in the store, you're not going to be spending money.
Choose cheap hobbies.
I've got 3 hobbies that I partake in all the time. One of them is kind of an unusual hobby, granted. I enjoy collecting old 78 RPM records. Now, these are the real early kind that they played on a Victrola, and they have a little different sound to them, but I enjoy those. So I collect records. That's a very inexpensive hobby, basically because nobody wants them. So there's a lot of people that are very willing to give them to me. In fact, I even had an Edison phonograph given to me with 80 or 90 records in it that somebody just did not want. Another thing that I do regular photography. You don't have to spend a lot of money on photography. I got this camera years ago. This is a 2005 Canon, and I purchased this from eBay. I paid $33 for this. I take all of my pictures with this. I've taken thousands of pictures using that camera. Another hobby, just real brief, the last one I'll mention, I do a lot of bike riding. I purchased a bike about 25 years ago for $100. It was a brand new bike. It was new old stock. It was over at a local Schwinn dealership. They did not sell it in the 1980s. And they wanted to get rid of them. They had a whole basement full. And so the bike sold new for like $250 back in 1981. They sold it to me brand spanking new, $100. It's the bike that I still ride today.
So what do you all do that is good, cheap, fun? What are your fun hobbies that don't cost you a lot of money? Leave those in the comment section. We would love to know. All right, the next thing is you would be amazed at the number of people who purchase things for which there are rebates available, and they simply don't take the time to fill out the rebate form and send it in. It does not take that long to do, and we do this consistently, especially with places like Menards, and we always have like rebate forms sitting around, money that they've sent back to us. Now, the caveat is at Menards, the rebates are only available to be spent at Menards. So you have to spend it in store. But yeah, we're always getting some money back on things.
Oh yeah, those are good. That's a good way to save money. As long as you can make enough money up to justify the postage. That's something I always think about. You send it in, you're going to be making up more than that amount of money. This is something that Hope does that I'm not as familiar with, so I'll let her talk about it. But install money-saving apps on your phone or on your computer. So what do you got there, Hope?
All right, so we have links for all 3 of these in the description of this video. We use Ibotta. Honey and Rakuten are browser extensions that help you find money-saving coupons, and they also send you a certain amount of cash back when you shop at specific stores online. And then Ibotta is mostly a grocery saving rebate where you scan your grocery receipts and then you receive money back on those purchases. But I use all 3 of them. They all 3 work.
This is an old-fashioned idea that our parents did, and that's hanging laundry outside. Now, we did this just yesterday. I did up a bunch of bedding, and bedding, heavy blankets, quilts, and so on, they really bog down the dryer, and we usually have to do one at a time. So we'll be all day drying those. We hung those out at about 8:30 in the morning. By 5:30 at night, they were bone dry, put the bed back together. That saved some money and wear and tear on the dryer.
This is another old-fashioned idea that we did for years, and part of the reason it worked is because our first home had a lawn that was the size of a postage stamp. So the whole lot was 62 by 62 feet. So the lawn was just not that big because most of that square footage was taken up by the house. And so we bought a real REEL lawnmower.
Now that's a non-motorized mower. I found one that was made in Germany that had blades that you did not have to keep sharpening. That's the only problem with an old-fashioned reel mower. You have to have a place where you can take that in about every year and have those blades sharpened for you. This did a fantastic job on our lawn, and Hope got to liking it so much. I would get home from work, and by golly, the whole lawn would be mowed because she'd go after it with that lawnmower. I was really happy about that.
You guys, it was like 30 minutes of walking with resistance exercise. So like, I mean, the lawnmower put just enough resistance against my arm muscles that I got that resistance exercise in with the walking. I absolutely loved it. I was like, no, I want to do this. Stay away from the lawnmower. And our oldest boys actually went to the lady who lived next door, who actually had a smaller lawn than we did.
If you can imagine that.
Yeah, and she was an older single lady, and they said, Miss Nailing, we would love to mow your lawn for you. And she hired them. That was their first job. I think they were 8 and 10 years old, and they mowed her lawn for years and trimmed it every week. And I think she paid them $10 altogether for doing it.
Two other things that I liked about that lawnmower. Number one, it did not use gas, so I never had to go to the gas station and get gas for it. And two, it was extremely quiet. I could put on headphones and put music on, not have to turn it up very loud, and just very quietly mow the lawn. The neighbors liked it too. We could mow it at earlier times in the morning if we wanted to without disturbing the neighborhood.
All right, here's the next one. And I don't know if this is going to be controversial or not, but I'd love to hear your opinions. Do not pass by Curbside Finds.
What is a curbside find?
Well, that's something somebody else has thrown out to the curb, and it's their trash, but boy, is it your treasure.
We used to take walks in one of the nicer neighborhoods north of where we lived, and we lived in a nice neighborhood, but this happened to be a little nicer neighborhood. And we found out that on Wednesday nights, that was their garbage night, they threw out the most amazing stuff. And we would have to, I'd have to leave Hope behind watching the treasure, whatever
guarding
it was, while I ran back home to get the car. We finally gave up walking that night. We just drove the route. So that became our route, and we found the most interesting items. Usually they might have needed a coat of paint or a little repair. Sometimes nothing. Sometimes they were just throwing it out. So we still occasionally find a really good curbside find. So we'll have to have some B-roll here to show a couple items that we have in this house that we found thrown out to the curb.
Yeah, well, we're showing you some of the items that still exist in our house that we actually found out to the curb. Then I'm going to take the time to mention that we actually cleaned up a lot of these things, did a little repair work on them, or maybe refinished them, and we would sell them every single year at our yearly garage sale. We had the garage sale the same weekend every single year. We had great signage. People would drive around and look for our signs to appear and deliberately come to our garage sale. We had it all organized by category. So we had like the Christmas area, we had the household area, we had everything categorized, big signs made that hung from the ceiling that told you like what department you were in. We played really fun music from the 1940s, and we served coffee. So free coffee. People loved to come to our garage sale every year, and we did it with 2 other families. They were great friends of ours. We were the garage sale clan. We did it every year, and we would make, just our portion would be $400 or $500 on a one-day sale.
The next item is to buy well-made, brand name, used clothing. Now, I just found a couple of really good finds at the local thrift store. This is a Wrangler shirt And these are name brand jeans. I can't remember what they are, but they're name brand. These are lined. I was really wanting a pair. It's hard for me to find clothes in my size because I'm 6'3", and it's a little hard to find the large, tall stuff. So I think I paid less than $5 for these two items. They would have cost a lot more new, and they're like in new condition.
And speaking of buying clothing, it is a great idea to keep a list on your phone of everybody in the family of their current sizes and what they currently need. Especially if you have children, it's important to do that because you never know when you're going to be out someplace and find a great deal and think, I don't know if they actually need that or not. But if you keep that list on your phone, you will never again wonder, do they need it or do they not need it?
Another item to consider is avoiding needless upgrades and replacements. You know, it's funny. I'm actually editing this program on a 2002 Apple G4 computer, and I've had that a long time. I actually bought it brand new. It was old stock. It was left in the back of a warehouse, and I purchased that, maybe 15 years ago. But it works for what I want to use it for. Now, granted, we want to upgrade, probably by next year, we want to upgrade our equipment because the camera that we're using is also a 2002 camera. So, but for right now, it's working, it's not broke, so we're not replacing it. And that is going to save us a little bit of money. Now, in relationship to that, if you have items that you can repair and fix, it's cheaper to fix an item than it is to replace it. At least most of the time. When it gets to the point where it gets past that, then you want to replace it. But if you can repair an item, by all means, that will save some money.
And remember, we want to hear from you in the comments section of this video. We want to know what creative ways have you found to save money. Frugal, creative ways. And in 2 weeks, we are going to have a program that showcases the best of all of the suggestions that have been sent in.
We also had a restaurant in town that offered a night of free children to eat. No, that didn't sound right at all.
Oh my goodness.
They really didn't do that. We'll have DCFS after us. That just did not come out right.
I think we should try take 2 on that.
Okay, wait a minute. Children to eat. Oh boy.